Hello, and thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about which finance program is right for me. But before we begin this webinar, just a few housekeeping rules. So this webinar will be recorded and it'll be sent out to you within the next week. So if you are unable to attend live, we will be able to send that to you in the next couple of days. So this webinar will run for about 40 to 45 minutes. During that time, we will go through the introduction, so why we're on the webinar and get to know us, an overview of the finance programs, and we'll have some alumni reflections, and we'll have time for a short Q&A. If there's any questions that you're thinking about the programs or that you hear that spring to mind during the webinar, please do add it to your chat and we will answer any general questions during the webinar. And if you've got any specifically for the panelists, then we will answer them towards the end of the webinar. Just to be mindful, if you do have your microphones on, please can you mute them? That'd be fantastic, so that we don't have any transitional noise. Before we start, we would just like to start by way of some introductions. So my name is Clara Blackings Pollard, and the reason why I'm here is I work as a program consultant for Saïd Business School, where I look after the Oxford Real Estate Programme and the Oxford Private Equity Programme. So my role really is to support all participants who are interested in applying to the programme, to go through the application process and be there for you when you come to join us here in Oxford. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Carrie to make her introductions.
Thanks so much, Clara, and it's great to see so many people joining us today on this webinar, which I hope proves valuable in starting your executive education journey. As Clara mentioned, my name is Carrie. I'm one of the programme sales managers within executive education, and I also lead on the recruitment for the valuation of private assets programme. So together with Clara, we cover all three of our finance portfolio. So I will start by giving a quick overview of the valuation of private assets programme before handing over to Clara to cover her programmes of real estate and private equity. If there are any aspects of these programmes which strike your interest or feel like they align to your role, please do make a note and ask any questions along the way or afterwards as well. So the valuation of private assets programme is directed by Ludovic Filippo and Anna Kozalika, which is 5 days long and immerses you in the world of private assets and really aims to provide you with the skills and the confidence to make and advise on investment decisions across classes. And that can include venture capital and startups, corporate acquisitions, real assets and private credit. The programme runs once per year, with our next cohort running from the 14th to the 18th of October this year. So the programme really allows you to gain hands-on valuation experience across infrastructure, real estate, emerging markets, ESG and impact investing. And it really hones in on the key skills needed in this space, including negotiation strategies, due diligence, financial modelling, identifying common valuation mistakes, solving commercial disputes and strategies to close the deal. So throughout the week, we'll have various academic sessions, case studies, and group activities such as role plays, which allows you not only to apply your knowledge in a practical way, but also build your connections with the rest of the cohort throughout the week. That's a little overview of valuation of private assets. So I'll hand over back to Clara to give you details onto her programmes.
Thank you, Clara. So as mentioned before, my name's Clara and I look after the Oxford Real Estate Programme and the Oxford Private Equity Programme. If you're interested in the Oxford Real Estate Programme, this might be the right programme for you if you're an investor and you're thinking about leveraging your portfolio. So this programme is led by Professor Andrew Baum, and he really has curated this to get into the mindset of an investor to make you make solid investment decisions in the future. So you might be thinking about scaling your portfolio, diversifying your assets, or for example, you're thinking about the risks that you might be in your investments and also how to maximize return. So this is a great program for you to get involved in if these are the things that you're thinking about. So other things that is great about this program, it's very practical. It's a mix of lectures and case studies. So you get to be in groups where you discuss real life cases and you can think about how that would apply to the strategies in your organization. If you're thinking about setting a fund, for example, we have a great fund project where you're in groups of 6 to 8. So you mix with people from different demographics, and then you pitch a real estate fund, and then you pitch it to 3 investors at the end of the week. And these investors can give you real-time advice. For example, yes, I would invest in you. No, I wouldn't invest in you. Why would I invest in you? Are there other people? And they'll give you also practical things like this wouldn't work. Your term sheet is rubbish. Real great advice if you're thinking about doing a fund. The other program I look after is the private equity program. The private equity program is a great program because it gives you an oversight of the entire private equity ecosphere. So that means that you're looking at things from raising funds right up all the way to investments. If you're interested in this program, perhaps you are thinking about different types of vehicles, leverage buyouts, venture capital, private debt, and this is the program for you. For any lawyers, for example, we have a great speaker called Chris Kalos who comes onto the program, and for 2 days he talks about all of the very specific questions that sometimes you just can't get to the answer to. So he will look at due diligence, performance measures, fund structures. And for example, a great question we get asked is, why the European waterfall and why not the American waterfall? So that's what he's there for. The program is curated by Professor Tim Jenkinson. So he will get into the mindset of private equity and be there to support you during your learning journey. Other than obviously having fantastic learning journeys, you'll also be able to have fun and network with all the other participants in the program. So you have your teaching from 9 through 6, but afterwards you have networking dinners, including being in a college, and that gives you the opportunity to maximize your networking with the other colleagues in the program as well. Speaking of networking, your classes can be quite intense. So we do ask people to sort of get out of your organization for a couple of days, fully immerse yourself in Oxford and really enjoy the experience and enjoy the potential of your learning journey. I'll hand over back to Carrie to walk through typical cohort profiles and that apply to some of our programs.
Thanks, Clara. And yeah, so just in regards to the cohort profiles, for the valuation of private assets cohort, it's comprised of a globally diverse group of financial professionals coming from a wide range of sectors and bringing diverse perspectives into the classroom. So participants may come from professional services and consulting, corporate, banking, family offices, private equity, investment management, to name a few. So you get a real mix in there. And as you can see from the slides, participants on the programme typically have around 10 years experience in the financial sector and around 5 years in investments or mergers and acquisitions, or perhaps have responsibility for investment decision making within the organisation. But if you're unsure on your suitability, we're always very happy to have a conversation about your experience and your background. Our contact details will be on the last slide, so do get in touch if you want to discuss it further. And I'll pass back to Clara to cover real estate and private equity.
Thanks, Carrie. Similar to the real estate program, I would say to the valuation of private assets program, apologies. The real estate program, we're really looking for a minimum of 5 years working real estate investments. So that's where you will be making the investment decisions. Perhaps you're sitting in investment committee. You're working in C-suite, managing director, liaising and looking after funds. So these are people who have very large portfolios and making serious decisions that will affect their businesses moving forward. So you really want to think about your strategy for the next 5 to 10 years. Although there's a 5-year minimum, I would say 95% of the program are participants who have been around, who have the experience of 10, 15 or 25 years working in real estate. So we see people who are entrepreneurs working in real estate. We see people from private funds, investment funds. We see a rise in family offices, for example, who come to the program. It's a real mixture of people working in the real estate space. So it's a really great program to get involved in. And the private equity program, again, there's a minimum of 5 years working in private equity investment, but that's not the usual that we have. Again, it's 10, 15, 25 plus years working in private equity. These are senior leaders with lots of M&A, leverage leverage buyout experience. I would say typically, as seen on the slide, usually have great financial background from economics, accounting, MBA, and you want to come and really be immersed with other people working in this space. So I would stress that these programs are not novice programs. So if you are thinking about going into real estate, this isn't the program for you. But if you are working in real estate, you're an investor and you really want to meet other like-minded people who have the same experience levels, and you're thinking about going into different markets, for example, or you really want to maximize investment opportunities and maybe at-risk markets where you're unsure, this is a great program for you. So speaking of people who have been on the program, I'm going to hand over to Carrie now to introduce, to talk about the program combinations that we have here at the Business School.
Thank you. Yeah, as Clara mentioned, if you are thinking that maybe one or more of these programs are suitable and you'd like to apply, there are some examples here of combinations that participants have taken. You can take these programs solo, but we have found that the learning journeys on the slide have the most successful outcomes. So it's worth thinking about your journey and how you can really accelerate your development and impact your organisation and role.
And, you know, you can think about taking them once, or you can think about taking them in different combinations, but we're here to help you to figure out which is the best starting point for these programs and where you want to go next. So that's one of the great roles of the program consultants, is we're really thinking about you and your learning journey and what your objectives are and where you want to be. So these are the types of programs you can do. But if you're thinking perhaps which one's right for me, which one should I start with, please do reach out. That's what we're here for. So Carrie, I'll hand over to you for the alumni section.
Yes, thank you. Well, we are absolutely delighted to have with us today two of our very esteemed alumni, Richard Perellis and Melissa Akerman, who have attended between them all three of our finance programs. So this section of the webinar will be looking at alumni reflections and how the programs have really impacted them. So I'll firstly hand over to Melissa to introduce herself first, followed by Richard, before Clara starts off the questions to our alumni. And what I will say, if you do have any questions during the alumni panel, please do pop them in the chat, because we will be taking questions from the audience. But first, Melissa, over to you.
Thank you, Carrie. Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today. My name is Melissa Akerman. I'm based in Zurich, Switzerland. And my private markets background began on the deal side with structuring commercial real estate deals. And then I shifted into investor relations and capital formation, where I distributed a wide array of alternative investment products. I've represented clients from across various geographies, such as US, Europe, Africa, LATAM, and China, and have experience working on the advisory side, private equity firms, as well as the insurance side of the industry. And in 2021, I leveraged my background into starting my own private placement business, which is called Resilience Capital in Zurich, Switzerland, and specializes in helping predominantly US-based sponsors expand into the UK and DACH markets. And I also provide strategic advisory services spanning from product development and structuring, guidance on regulatory requirements and distribution strategy and execution on mainly fund and co-investment opportunities.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Richard Perales. I am based in Peru. I am a real estate portfolio manager with over 20 years experience. I've been involved in deal structuring, investor relationships, and asset management. I am an architect by training, and after an MBA like a decade ago, I joined a real estate fund, and I work in a mix of technical and business skills. So I have been involved in the entire cycle of the real estate business, from raising capital to exit strategies. So we mainly invest in Peru, and we are now targeting have a regional presence. We are looking at Panama, Mexico, Colombia, and Chile to expand our investment in real estate.
Well, thank you, Richard and Melissa. It's really wonderful to have you guys here, and thank you for sharing your time with us and your reflections of the programs. So I'd really like to start with you, Melissa, to talk about the question. My question for you is, can you briefly tell me why you chose the program? And I think you've got a unique perspective because you actually attended the first ever valuation of private assets program. So you have a unique perspective as well.
Yeah, for me, it was around the time that I had started my own firm, and my background has been predominantly on the fundraising side. I mean, in real estate, I was structuring deals, but I wasn't, on the investment side in PE. And a big part of the placement business is, really evaluating managers to understand which strategies and teams are going to be the most marketable to an investor. Because at the end of the day, if you have a great product but it's not the right time, or it's not a team that people really feel that they can trust and that they want to invest in, it's obviously not the best selection. So what I recognized that would be helpful for me would be to understand from a valuation standpoint how to really look at these different managers. Both from the quantitative, but also from the qualitative, metrics that, one would typically measure with making those decisions. And so from this program, I was really able to get a deeper kind of exposure to that. And I would say, in addition to that, which was really nice, is that your colleagues are all coming from different areas within the industry. And so everybody has different contributions in the discussions and the case studies. And so it really gives a very well-rounded view into this topic. And so for me, that's what I was hoping to, obtain by participating in this program. And I certainly did.
Richard, same question to you.
So in my case, I took the two programs, as you can see. I started with the real estate program in 2022, and what attracted to me, it was a need for me to know what is in the global market. Since my background is mainly focusing in Latin America, I wanted to know what's going on everywhere else. And I got a lot of information, not only by the peers you will have in the classroom, but also by the faculty. They have fantastic knowledge about what's happening in Europe, in Africa, and in Asia, and what are the trends. It was really insightful for me to interchange experience with all of them. And of course, it led me to the interest to take the private equity program, because one thing I learned in the first program, it was that the real estate business is more or less the same everywhere. No matter what, you can make this business apart from the local regulations or something like that. But one thing I know that it was missing is, in my knowledge, it was the deal structuring. And that part, I got it in the private equity program, because I learned a little bit more how to mix debt and equity and all possible combinations to make a deal profitable. And that's why I really connect those dots. This is in terms of what you have heard before about the program combinations. For me, it worked very well to take the real estate program first and the private equity program right afterwards.
Oh, thanks, Richard and Melissa. So, and your reflections are really important, because there'll be a lot of people who are thinking about doing these programs, and this will really help them to sort of make their choices. So thanks for sharing that feedback with us.
Can I add something to that, actually? Yeah. This popped into my mind because, to Richard's point, so I started my career on the real estate side. So I didn't do the real estate program because I, felt that I was pretty covered in that area. But what I will say is by doing, because I also did two programs, I did the private equity program first, and then I did the valuations program. And what was so fascinating to me was when I did the private equities program and being in the industry, I could really see how there is so much similarity between private equity and real estate, but a lot of it is just different terminology. So conceptually, they're very similar, but I think a lot of times people get a little bit tripped up about it because it's such different terminology. And if you're not having that awareness of how they're interchangeable, then it's almost like a foreign language, right? You kind of have to know what that language is, and then you start to translate it into the other language. And that's definitely something that I, became so clear to me, and I could really see when I was doing the fundamentals of the private equity program.
Thanks, Melissa. That's really useful, and thanks for sharing that with us. I've got another question for you. So my question is kind of around your experience of being in Oxford and doing the program. So looking back on each of your programs, what would you say you enjoyed the most about your experience, or what did you think you took away the most from being there?
Okay, well, there's a lot of things, so I'll try to break it down to a few. I would say for one, because it's been a long time since I've been in a school environment. So it was really fantastic being fully immersed into an educational environment where everybody's bringing different perspectives and information to the discussions. And everyone's so enthusiastic about it, to be there to learn and share. And so I really enjoyed that energy and that intensity. I mean, it's a very, intense week for sure. They're very long days, but it's so rewarding, and everybody's there with the same, objective. So I think that's one. And then the other part was, being there at the university and the events that we had at the campus. I mean, we did one evening where, we were wine tasting with a sommelier. And then we also had a lovely dinner at one of the colleges, and like a nightcap after. And it was just really good quality time for networking and getting to know your peers and the other, the program directors and the professors leading. So I think, that was also a real highlight of the program. And then, kind of touching back on what Richard said, also really the macro outlook that you get from, all of your peers that are coming from various geographies around the globe. I mean, you're hearing about, what's specific to their market, and you're able to really compare and contrast where there are differences and similarities. And this is something that, even when you're going to, the conferences, I feel like you don't often get a lot of that time to have those kinds of discussions, because there's really such a purpose there to, market your fund or have, meetings about something specific. So this is putting you in a similar type of environment, but the focus is really about you and your learning and networking with, other peers that are in the industry. So I think those, three things really stood out to me, and I found, just an absolute tremendous opportunity in the program.
So as I do agree totally with Melissa, as you can see in the picture, so that's me in the first row. And the guy I have on my right side, he is from Pakistan. I'm not going to try to remember his name because it was quite difficult. But one important thing is that you will learn a lot from your peers. I mean, before the real estate program, because this is the cohort from the real estate program, I was not aware of an asset class in real estate called life science. And those guys on my right side, they had a pharmaceutical facility, and they provide services for labs or for research universities teams. And it was a real asset class. It was booming at that point, not long ago. After COVID, everybody else in the world just focus on health facilities, and labs and pharma are one of the main things that are growing. Just beside the data centers, which is more like on all news now, but this is one of the things I learned a lot from my peers. And I also have to say that when I was in this program, as Melissa said, since we are both in real estate from quite a long time, I was really comfortable among the class because everybody was speaking the same language. But when I moved to the private equity program, it was not as easy as suspected. It is true that it has a lot of similarities, but it is also true, as Melissa said, that it's a foreign language. You have to be really aware to connect the dots and to make the balance between the information and just the language. But it was really good also to see the same reality from different perspective, from the peers' perspectives as well, because you will find people with a lot of experience, people with zero experience, maybe like me in that case, in the private equity sector. But you will learn. I mean, if everybody else is in the same room, it means that everyone needs something to know. Everyone needs something to learn. So don't hesitate to take the risk to learn with everybody else.
Thank you so much, Richard and Melissa, for sharing that. And I think that's one of the key takeaways that we always sort of miss sometimes with the programs is it's really, really hard learning because it's intense. It's a short program, but there's a lot to get through. But it's done in a way where everyone can help each other. You're thinking about a program, you're not going to know everything happening there, but you've got fantastic peers that you can talk to who have been in similar situations, who face challenges similar to yourself, and you can sort of get some guidance or some strategies as well. And it is fun, and I do enjoy the dinners and the fun that we have afterwards, because the networking is really important in terms of meeting different people, getting different ideas and mindsets, and really realizing how these asset classes work in different markets as well. So thanks for sharing that. My other question would be, you've kind of touched on a couple of highlights, but what would you say is the most impactful thing that you took from the program, and how does that apply to your role today?
Would you like me to answer first?
Yeah, Melissa, yes, please.
I would have to say definitely, really understanding the valuations approach, the different methodologies, and how, each of those are applied to each respective part of private equity, VC, buyout, growth, and so forth. Because it is very different, right? And even also how you're evaluating a more established manager versus an emerging manager. Because these are things that I'm doing in my essentially day-to-day, work with my business. There's the execution part of the mandates that I have, but then there's also the business development of meeting with GPs and, determining if it's something that could be a good fit for, distributing to the markets that I distribute into. And then also really correlating that to where we are in the cycle. Obviously can't always time everything, but, there's certain strategies that become out of favor for a period of time. And it's just not, it doesn't make sense to be marketing those at that respective time versus, for example, right now, for the past year, I've been working with a U.S. Credit manager, and they have various credit products. And, senior direct lending right now is a very kind of, call it more safe, secure, less risky type of investment. And because you've got the, quarterly distributions, whereas, in other sectors right now, it's a little bit more light in that respect. So I think like these things for me were really key to being able to continue to push forward with driving the growth of my business. So I would say for me, that was definitely the highlight, most impactful to, what I'm doing right now.
So in my case, I have to say that the real estate program helped me to understand in a wider way the portfolio management and the importance of diversify a portfolio to balance risk and to maximize returns. I mean, it's quite obvious, but in the program, you will have the opportunity to explore, to make a case study on that. And it's quite interesting because you can easily translate it to your daily life. And if I move to the private equity program, what I learned the most is the debt structure, which it's connected with the other one because it helps you to contribute to the profitability of the portfolio just by really making efficient the financial side of the deal. And I guess those were the most important lessons that I can get it.
Thanks, Richard. And thank you, Melissa. So we're going to move on to the Q&A part. We have had a few questions that have come through. What we'll do is we'll start with the first question from Michael John to each of you. And it's quite a unique question that we actually get asked quite a lot in terms of experience. So Michael John said, why would such experienced individuals, 20 plus years, sign up for a program covering specifically PE or valuation fundamentals? Surely you would have already been exposed to the program curriculum. Is this specifically focused then to transition between roles? Or is it to do with the experience in the industry or more about networking? What would you say to that? I'll start with Richard.
So I will say beside the knowledge, one important thing is the networking. So I can share a personal experience. When I attended the real estate program, I met a guy from Mexico, but he is living in Panama quite a long time ago, and we get really close. And one important opportunity became of that friendship because I was invited to his company to help them to start a real estate fund. They wanted to build a REIT, and I act as a consultant for them because I had the experience, they have the interest, and I was immersed 1 week in Panama, just meeting all the stakeholders possible to understand the ecosystem of the real estate business there. And it was really insightful, and not only to try to transfer my knowledge into that ecosystem, but also to gain knowledge for that specific country. And it is nice. I mean, you never know where the opportunity comes from, and it usually comes from someone among the classroom.
Yeah, same to you, Melissa. Do you have any feedback?
Yeah, I would say a few things. I mean, yes, even though having, X amount of years of experience, you definitely have a lot of knowledge, but I'm a believer. I mean, things don't stay static. Things evolve, they change. There's different market dynamics. There's different ways that things are done. So I think it's, what I seek in education too, and continuously, learning is that you're really up to speed with what the latest is. Because otherwise, I believe that you kind of fall behind, and I want to be at the forefront of what's new. So yes, there were things that maybe I already had awareness of, but I think you also fill in the gaps where sometimes you're actually surprised too. Sometimes you learn something that you didn't realize you didn't know or you weren't aware of. And you don't know that unless you're in an environment that can demonstrate that to you. So I think that it's really impactful for that. And then it also may help validate maybe an area where you feel that you're not that strong in, and you want to try to augment that knowledge. It gives you that ability, and then the result is that is more confidence in that respective subject. So I think that that's quite key. The other thing too is, yes, definitely the networking. I mean, I also had a very positive experience from the program, like Richard, where I met several LPs, both in the US and European LPs, where I proceeded to then have meetings with them, with some of my clients. And that purely came through, the networking there at the program. So I think that, going into the program, you can make out of it like what you want. You really, if someone's not really looking to network, which I think would be a pity, it's not that you're forced to, but I think, when you go into it with your eyes wide open and really kind of just, open to all the different opportunities that can come your way, then you're also surprised at some of the other things that come your way that maybe you hadn't even expected. So yeah, I think there's a lot to really take away from programs like these.
Thank you. Another question that's come through that we get asked quite often is in terms of cohort sizes. So for these programs, the cohort sizes are 40. So we have 40 participants maximum for each program. How do you guys feel about the sizes of the cohort? Because we always feel 40 is a great number because it gives you enough time to get to know everyone in the room. But how do you feel about it? Melissa, maybe start with you.
Yeah, I think it is a very good size. I think that if it started to get larger, it makes it a little bit less intimate, if that makes sense, where then it's a little bit harder to get that opportunity to kind of meet everybody, because you got to remember, you're spending a week there together, and relationship building, as we know, it doesn't happen. You don't just meet somebody the first time and then, you've got this great relationship. It's the repetitive, the talking, the interacting, the working on things together, where you really start to, build that kind of relationship. And I think that if there's too many people, then it's really hard to get around to, everybody. And then maybe it also depends on someone's personality. Maybe, somebody is, more introverted and just wants to, be around a couple of people. But yeah, I think that having that kind of size, it just gives a good opportunity to really engage in fruitful discussions with your other colleagues.
So I do feel the same. I mean, it's the size it's right. I mean, it's but you will find really interesting because each people, even though are 30 or 40, they have different backgrounds. So each break time or each dinner time, or you will find something new, something interesting, something different, and it's quite good to have the knowledge every time. I mean, you will enjoy a lot to learn from your peers. That's really one of the most important things, and the one I value the most, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. There was another question that came in from AJ around wives attending, and I think we understand that people have family commitments, and it can be quite challenging to have a week off away from work and the family. I would advise that this program is quite intense, so most of your time, I would say 9 until 6 you're doing your teaching, and then from 7 until 11 you're doing your networking. So it's quite an intense day. So we do advise that where possible, there's not really much time to integrate with the family or to have them with you during the week. So yeah, if you are thinking of coming, where possible, if you could come individually, this is really for your focus. We hope that you would do that in that week. Yeah. Yeah, so another question, which please feel free to answer because I don't know the answer to it myself, is from Sarah. So Sarah says that if you are in a high-risk, unstable and unclear future in a country such as Iraq, what, in your opinion, would be the best finance program to apply? What advice would you give to Sarah? Perhaps Richard or Melissa, which would you like to answer first?
I can jump in. So I would say, in the valuations program, there was one speaker that we had that was from Africa. So, another emerging market, because I also cover African strategy. So I'm, quite familiar with all the risks that are associated with investing in emerging markets. And I thought that, that speaker did a very good job of really talking about these types of, concerns that you have, or, because it is very different than developed markets. And I think that, the fact that there was that module within the program, it really helps touch on that, because it's a different perspective that you have to really, have and considerations, because the questions that investors have are very different than what than what an investor would have in like the US or Europe. I mean, they're comfortable with the markets. They know what's taking place. So they're not needing so much of like an educational background like they do in these emerging markets. So I think that from, the two programs that I did, that the valuations program was really helpful with touching on that. And I'm sure that Richard, sitting in South America, can also probably speak to this as well.
Yes, I do agree. I mean, it's in that case, my answer will be the private equity program, because it will deal in a better way to assess all the risk, all the due diligence that you have to do. I mean, it's in emerging market. Everybody is looking for the highest IRR possible, but no one is looking at the risk that it comes with that. And but you have to really take an assess on that. And I guess the private equity program will help a lot with us. As Melissa said, I mean, the program and valuation will also do that.
Thank you. We have a question from Tomas. So Tomas says, can you mention one thing that you've learned that you can immediately apply to increase the value of your real estate projects or improve your daily work? For example, how does this real estate program that you did, how did the case studies, for example, help you as well?
So I will mention that the portfolio point of view, how to build the portfolio, how to distribute risk and diversify not only location but also asset classes, and in different times of the investment period. It's the most useful tool that I use in my daily life. I mean, it's this and connected with the debt structure. It helped me a lot to have a wider view than I had before. I mean, everybody talks about the long-term investments, and many people can say that, but being a long-term investment is not only the possibility to have time. You also have to have the exact knowledge to connect the dots between the time and the target markets and the trends. And if you connect those three things, you will know exactly where to go. Otherwise, you will just stay with the same asset for a long period of time and not maximizing your profitability.
Great. Melissa, did you have anything to add, or?
Well, since I didn't participate in the real estate program, I think that Richard probably has it well covered since he did.
Great. And another question from Tomas, which I think I'll start, and then if you'd like to add, is kind of talking around the programs, and do they focus on current challenges, or does it concentrate on future trends in emerging markets? So what I would say is all of these programs and the program directors, it's a curated week. So they are looking at what your challenges are in the market space, and that's what's fed into the program itself. And what really helps with the learning, as we've mentioned before, is the peer-to-peer learning. So the real case studies, the peer-to-peer learning brought from the participants sharing what their challenges are as well. So we mix that together, which is fantastic. And then I would say in terms of future trends, we talk about what is AI going to do to the industry. We have no idea what's going to happen, but we do look at that and see how that might affect, or are you thinking about planning that for that in your current organization? So we are thinking of current challenges, but we are looking to the future ahead as well. So I don't know if anyone wants to answer a bit more on that.
I can elaborate on that. I mean, I remember when we were doing the private equity program. So I did it in, I think it was Q1 2022. And so you didn't really have this democratization of private equity yet taking place, but you could see that was the direction things were going. And we were having a lot of discussions about that. And it was really fascinating too, because we would have these questions that would be prompted, and then everybody could start kind of, participating and having a discussion and sharing opinions. And so, yeah, we talked about this quite in depth. And then fast forward, I mean, that's essentially what has happened. I mean, there's, most of the firms, all the big players for sure, have set up structures where you can then have retail investors going into. So the wealth channels have really embraced the asset class. That's a big reason why you're seeing a lot of the growth taking place. So, we were really, at the forefront of those discussions that are happening. And now fast forward, you can see that it has, certainly transpired that way.
Great. Yeah, so we're almost wrapped up, but we do have a couple of more questions for you guys. So thanks everyone for sending them through. I know we've really enjoyed receiving them. So I hope these questions have been really helpful to you today. So one of the questions we had is, if you had to summarize your Oxford program experience in 3 words, what would they be and why? Richard, do you want to start?
No. So I was remembering, I mean, one thing that I have to do is experience, the Oxford experience, I will call it like that. Because as I mentioned before to you in the previous meeting, so the school really does a really good job about you as a participant enjoy the city and the places and all the facilities the university have. I mean, it's really special to have dinner in a church or to be welcomed with a priest to the church and to connect your presence with the history of the buildings and everything. It was, I mean, my first word was experience. The second word will be the peers. I mean, it's really rich, the variety of knowledge and backgrounds and cultures that it's really amazing to have. The only one is the knowledge. I mean, this is the amount of information you will have available during the class and after the class, because you will after be able to connect with the alumni network and all the resources that the school have. It's a valuable amount of information.
So if I were to describe it in 3 words, I would say intense, dynamic, and rewarding. Intense because the days are very long. You're starting, first thing in the morning, and you're going straight through, the evenings post dinner. So you're, getting back to your hotel around 10, 11 o'clock at night, and then, doing the same thing each day for 1 week. So that starts to get to be quite intense. Dynamic because you're being intellectually challenged in so many different ways that you're not normally in your own, day-to-day environment, in your office environment. I mean, sure, you have colleagues, but you're working on the kind of the same things, what to expect. I mean, being in a new environment where you don't know, what the next day is going to be like, and there's new case studies or questions or discussions. I mean, you really have to be switched on. So that's a very, dynamic environment. And then rewarding because you then get to take all of this back with you and you get to apply it to what you're doing. And, you really feel, accomplished and what you've done in that intense week. And so, those would be the 3 words that I would use to describe the experience.
2 final questions whilst we have time. We often talk about diversity and inclusion. How much would you say the diversity was important to you when choosing this program? And how do you think that evolved during your week?
Shall I go first or Richard?
Thank you.
I think I think it's a couple things. I mean, being a female in finance, you kind of know that usually you're outnumbered. So I didn't really have any sort of set expectation of ratios on gender. I think I was more interested in, that there will be people from all over the world. So a lot of different cultures. I mean, I'm mixed cultured myself. So I think that it's, fascinating to be able to meet people from different walks and experiences. So for me, that was really more the diversity that I kind of put the emphasis on. But I will say, yes, there were certainly, females in the classroom environment too. So it was nice to have the mix in all regards.
So in my case, I mean, I was in both programs. I mean, the only one from South America. I mean, there were people from Central America and everything, but they nobody else from South America. It was really good for me because it's like I was there just to see the rest of the world, not exactly the rest of my continent. So that's why it felt good for me being the only one or the different one in the class.
Fantastic. And one final question from us. What advice would you give to people who are thinking about applying to the program? So Melissa, do you want to start?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, if you're thinking about it and you're indecisive, then don't overthink it. Just do it. Just go for it. I mean, I look at it this way. Something like this, you're never going to regret that you did it. If you don't do it, you may have regrets that you never did. So that's my advice.
Yeah, in my case, I have to say the education in this kind of business schools and they're one of the tops in the world. It's the best investment you will do, and that's why I made it twice as Melissa as well. I mean, it's just like we were. I mean, for sure, we are going to be happy to come back. It's the best investment you will do for sure. And don't hesitate to do it because you may feel a little bit short of knowledge in one side. So as I said before, if everyone is in the same classroom, it's because everybody needs some new knowledge to have. And if you are in that position, so you're in the same position of everybody else.
Thank you so much, Melissa and Richard, for your time here and for answering the questions. And thanks to the audience for providing them. We've really enjoyed engaging with you and finding out what's really important to you when you're thinking about applying to the programme. I would just like to say this programme is in support of our executive education programmes here at Saïd Business School. So if you are thinking about applying and you're not sure about the application, we actually have a webinar next week on Thursday, the 12th of September. You can join me from 1 till 1:30 in UK time, and we'll be thinking about how to ace your finance programme application. So the top tips, do's and don'ts, and what we're really looking for in terms of participants joining the programme. So we'll have the QR code up for you if you'd like to register, but we'll also send you some details in the next couple of days. Also, if you are thinking about these programmes as well, you can apply now if you've decided to do so. The Oxford programme on valuation of private assets will be running from the 14th to the 18th of October. So please do get your applications in soon. The real estate programme will be running from the 18th to the 22nd of November, and the Oxford private equity programme will be running from the 10th to the 14th of February 2025. So those QR codes are there if you're looking and thinking about applying. So I'll just hand back over to Carrie.
Thanks so much, Clara, and to echo Clara's remarks to everyone, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. And a massive thank you to Melissa and Richard for joining us today as well. It's really, really wonderful having such engaged alumni, and we really appreciate you taking the time for us today. So I've put our contact details up on the screen. So please do write them down, write our details down, depending on what programme you're interested in. We're really happy to send some further information, schedule a one-to-one call. Always very happy to help, and we really hope to welcome you to Oxford. at one of our upcoming programs. So thanks again and have a lovely rest of your morning, afternoon or evening.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Bye,
It was really
everyone.
a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Bye
Thank
for
you.
now.
Bye bye.